identity politics has fractured so much that these categories of people who are implicitly pitted against each other for your sympathy are infinitely subdividing. And that's the second problem with this way of looking at the world, is that it's fundamentally adversarial. And so it pits us all against each other. And ironically, it pits us all against each other in the weirdest of spectrums, which is who's more oppressed, who has it the hardest. It is about seeing your powerlessness as your power. And that kind of inversion weirdly means that people who regard themselves as oppressed have no reason to get unoppressed, that is, to solve their problem, because their problem is their ticket, their gravy train. That's where all your power is.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dissolving the Divide. Really happy today to have a wonderful guest with Marja West. And of course, Derek. We're back in the saddle after a wonderful funnel conference, which I hope you all check out. It's a powerful event. So, hey, Derek, looks like you live in a beautiful place.
Yeah, I just had to show it off a little bit, right? And I know Marja lived in France, but I don't know if she's been over here near Marseille. But yeah, one of my most favorite people in the world, Marja West, in the place to be. Mon ami.
Thanks, you too.
I had to get you on a second time, and it's quite fitting. It's literally like a 2-year anniversary almost. Since
I know. It's so amazingly fast. And the two of you have done such amazing work. I mean, what episode is this now? What's 85. The number?
I think it might be more. I'm curious. Yeah. Have you lost track? We haven't really been keeping track.
I love it. I love it. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Good work.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you, Marja. That means
we always love your work as well. And, this word that we're going to be speaking about really caught my ear, especially in recent electoral times, right? So please, if you would mind.
Identitarianism. I mean, it is, when I first came up with that word, I don't know if I came up with it or whether I heard it or whether it was just kind of like downloaded, but everybody was talking about identity politics. And so the whole thing about isms, whether, it's veganism or flat earthism or anarchism or, kiss my buttism, that kind of stuff. It's like, oh my God. And here's the thing. And as a reality transurfer, these specialty clubs, whether it's left, right, center paradigms, or whether it's to eat meat or to not eat meat, these are all systems of realities, clubs, so to speak, where the energy harvesting potential is at its peak, with people joining up or pushing up against it. So it doesn't matter whether you're for it or against it, that system will gobble up all that energy. And currently we have some crazy things going on, especially with the whole kerfuffle with Trump and Zelensky. And so I have family who is a combination of a Russian, Ukrainian, Finnish, Chinese, Mongolian. And so all my relatives, we were like on a Zoom call discussing it. And, nobody knows the history. So I was just sitting there marveling, going, wow, this is like really kooky. And of course, I don't pay attention to a lot of it, but I saw enough of it and just kind of like notice how heated things were. And as things get heated, technology goes wonky. And so, people started cutting in and out. The sound was crazy. All of a sudden there were like weird barking noises in the middle of the Zoom. And I'm just laughing because now for me, because I don't really join up on these things and I'm more of a provocateur to just sort of poke fun at it, now my family members are upset with me because they're seeing me as being disrespectful to the chain of events. But the disrespect, I think, comes from the fact that I'm not giving it any energy except to poke fun at it. And I think it's important for us to know that we're all part of some group. Like all three of us are part of one great work network in some form, shape, or fashion. I was part of the original launch back in 2021. Mark has since added to and wonderful people. It is a wonderful platform, and we are there in alignment with Mark and his vision of one great work network. So that network is a huge pendulum. It's a huge energy system, an energy club. Pendulums are what transurfers call these mass consciousness realities. It can be a belief system, it could be a club, it can be an organization, it could also be a mindset, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so that energy harvesting is, it is what it is, and it's neither good or bad. It just is what it is. Just like Mark talks about, human nature is not good or bad. It's just programmable. And what identitarianism is, what a pendulum is, what an egregore is, it is an energy system that we are giving our energy to, whether we like it or not, by either pushing up against it or aligning with it. So for myself, I have to check myself because I get like poked quite a lot. For me, the abuse of animals and children are particularly triggering for me. And I have to watch it because I will literally get sucked in to the whole mess. And before I know it, what happens when we adhere to something and we are kind of helpless is we've absolutely lost consciousness and power. And that group, that egregore, pendulum, mass consciousness reality has just hijacked your creative energy. And you don't even know what you're arguing about half the time, So I'm seeing all this nonsense on social media, on and on and on about Trump and Zelensky. It doesn't even matter. The bottom line is, what are you wanting? For myself, I want peace. I want peace. I don't want peace at the cost of more lives. So I'm very careful about what it is that I'm aligning with, because I know that if I get into a tete-a-tete with some group, especially people who have either Trump derangement syndrome or Putin derangement syndrome or Zelensky derangement syndrome, people are going to go nuts. And it's just going to be this system of realities that are coming and clashing. And but this is what happens, and people get crazy. The whole carnivore versus vegan thing. I've been involved in some of these groups, and I just have to sit back and go, okay, go. And they do. They go. They can't stop. And I've seen some of the online trolling from certain people, and I don't even know these people, but it's funny. Every now and again, I'll get tagged, and I'm just like going, do these people realize that I'm not vegan necessarily? I'm vegetarian mostly, but, I indulge. And for those groups, members of those groups, I'm seen as a murderous, bad person because of it. So you see how it goes crazy.
Right. And you could get pulled into this like very heated, destructive argument, right?
Indeed.
I'm hearing you talk about, we're all a part of some group here and there. Mm-hmm. That's natural, in some level, to align with certain groups of people. And yet, if we over-identify, right, and we allow our triggers or our passions to lead the show, that then can make us vulnerable to this like waste of our energy that really doesn't lead to resolution or anything good, but leads to more division. And so are you talking about sort of seeking a state of like equanimity or witness or detachment?
Yes, all of what you just said. And you know, there are different ways to approach it. So I know that for myself, and using transurfing, there are 3 screens of reality that I'm very, very conscious of at all times. And you know, just using the latest Matrix shit show, uh, the outer screen is everything social media, YouTube, everything everybody is reacting to that you are witnessing with your 5 senses, so to speak. So that's the outer screen. And then the inner screen, the second screen, is your reaction to whatever's going on out in the world, out in the matrix at large. Our consciousness screen is called the center screen. It is in between the outer and the inner screen. And in the center screen is where you have consciousness and you are noticing that you're witnessing and you're reacting at the same time, and you don't bite the bait. And this is what's called waltzing in and out of the matrix. Your consciousness, not your body, is waltzing in and out of the matrix. You're realizing that, oh, I'm watching this. Isn't this dumb? And that's part of your reactivity in your head, but you're not identifying with it. In other words, you realize what is going on, and you are consciously witnessing what's going on outside of you and also internally within you. And that is tricky. It's so tricky for people because people get caught up, and because of their whatever, their traumas, their pain, suffering, traumas and dramas, they're unable to sort of extricate themselves from this group or that group, or you know, they're stuck in their heads and they're ruminating, going back and forth and back and forth. And before you know it, you have this insanity going, and hours have passed, and you could have been doing something different consciously, but you didn't, because you didn't have enough consciousness to know the difference, to know where your attention was being harvested. And that is a big deal. And that, unfortunately, is most people in the matrix, you know.
Yeah.
So the scrolling on these devices, I've heard people tell me they've caught themselves where they're scrolling literally for 5 hours and didn't even know they were doing it. That's insane to me. Like, what? What
Yeah.
in the hell is going on there? And that is energy harvesting. This is another pendulum. This is an identitarian machine where you sit there and scroll and you get involved in whatever is capturing your attention, and you go to war with other people.
Yeah. It's a dissociation of sorts.
Indeed. That is a great way to describe it, Leslie. You know, it is a dissociation from yourself,
Right.
where your heart, mind, body, soul coordination is so out of whack. You're being triggered mentally, you're being triggered emotionally, you're having a body sensation about all of this, and your soul is going, what the fuck? And nobody is talking to one another. There's no alignment, there's no congruency. And so this is how people, I think, it's one of the reasons why we have tremendous aches and pains, or people have chronic pain, because they're not paying attention internally to what is being called, what's being called to be noticed, because they're so distracted by either the computer or distracted by their phones. And then I know people who are distracted by their pain as well. So it could work the other way, where your body becomes this huge identitarian tool based on pain, based on dysfunction, whatever it is, based on illness, that is the focus of your attention, and it goes nowhere good.
So true. I see that a lot, Marja. And I think it relates also to a sense of victimhood as well.
They
Yeah.
love to identify with that too, and
Yes.
identify with
Yes.
the pain and all that. But I'm wondering how much of this dopamine deficiency issue is leading to some of these pains as well, type of thing.
Oh, a lot. And I know so many people who actually call their phones their sort of comfort zones. So they're getting their dopamine hits. They're getting their feel good serotonin love potions off of these devices. And I'm like, wow, okay, well, you know, good on you. Good on you. However, I don't really see it as being all that productive, especially, if you got kids and you're not paying attention to your kids, or you are actually programming your kids to have the same behaviors rather than interact with them. And, do what you need to do to be a good parent, a good mother, a good father, a conscious parent. All that comes into play. So I see a lot of these devices and a lot of whatever it is we identify with in this identitarianism as ways to sort of bypass personal responsibility and personal choice as to, what it is that we are endeavoring to have for ourselves and our families.
Yeah, I
And
wanted
it's
to
too
add something about the parenting piece. I think that if you're spending so much time on the news and building up your inner fear state and anxiety about what's
Yes.
going on in the world, that whole emotional signature that you're vibrating is going to affect the children, right?
Absolutely.
They're going to
Absolutely.
take on that
Through
subtle
osmosis.
Yeah, and you're more likely to be grumpy and irritable and projecting fear onto them about their own life choices.
Yes.
So there's a lot of ripple effects to this. I
Yeah.
think what you're talking about is super important.
Yeah.
And so getting away from the screen seems to be an important strategy, being aware of how you're interacting with the screen. I mean, clearly
Yes.
it's functional in so many ways for a lot of us. But how do you advise people to maybe be more healthy in how they're relating to their phones and so forth?
Yeah. It's like turn off your devices. That's what I say. Turn them off. Turn off Wi-Fi. Go out into nature. Go out. Do an activity. Talk to each other. Create a meal and actually talk to each other. I've seen too many people at restaurants have got their devices that they're not even talking to each other. That's crazy to me. Like, what is that? And then, of course, with the addiction to the devices and to the computers and to the sort of divide and conquer of whether it's legacy media, whether it is Facebook, the meme wars that are going on right now. Wow. I mean, rich meme wars. I can't believe the creativity, which is kind of fun. But then at the same time, it is creating this fear mongering of World War III, of famine, of nuclear destruction, of on and on and on and on and on, this horrific just stream of mass consciousness, devastation, and destruction. And I know people who get off on that. They can't wait for World War III. And so that's not helpful either. So my advice is turn off the news, turn off the TV, turn off the devices. Stop streaming, except to stream beautiful content like this, where you're actually learning something, you're actually learning a skill, you're actually being able to see through the sort of maze of reality that the powers that want to be have created over the many, many, many millennia to not just control human consciousness, but harvest it as well for their own benefit and to our own demise, especially for us who are not aware of how reality actually works. And so by being together and talking to one another, like, when I had kids, we would talk about our dreams and we would get into these discussions about, okay, well, let's all brainstorm. I used to call it heartstorming. Let's heartstorm ideas about how we can get this dream of yours to materialize. And, my kids were into it. They were into it. And of course, I made it fun that we were all magicians here to move formless into form. So I use that kind of languaging. I use that kind of, fairy magic. There was the good fairy and the really naughty bad fairy. And my kids were so good. They would actually put themselves in their own little timeouts because they knew the difference between yay and nope. No, not that. So they would actually go to the laundry room and I'd hear the door close, and it's like, oh, okay. Well, Josh is giving himself a timeout with the cat. So because they knew that there were certain mindsets that were not very productive, that were not helpful, where the self-talk, and the self-talk is really important. Why am I identifying with, why do I feel like crap? Why am I saying I hate this person or hate these groups of people when I don't even know them? That divide and conquer is so alive, and it's alive within our children at a very early age because they learn from what they are witnessing from us. And so if you don't have these conversations, they're going to make their own assumptions, or they're going to see it on the television, or they're going to, have some kind of conversation with their peers, and it can go every which way. And I think it's important to just maintain a communication with those around you and have conversations that matter, so you're not defaulting for information with the devices. Because we're too much into this instant gratification, gimme, me kind of thing. And I think we need to really just embrace one another. And especially now, talk about all the potential things going on that are concerning for our kids and for our loved ones. And these are tricky conversations. And I know you both know this, tricky conversations, but it's got to start.
And the more that kids are immersed in the outer culture and social media culture and so forth, I think that the harder it is sometimes to get their attention or bring them into that questioning, right, of the mainstream. So the earlier you start, better. And I think this idea about default programming is really important. It's like, if you do not choose your thoughts, someone else will. Indeed. And if you don't help your children learn how to think or to become their own witness to self, and think about what they're observing, right, and to become aware of their feelings and reactions. If we don't help them to cultivate that, then they automatically will be in the default, which is, I think, one of the definitions of slavery, of being enslaved, is to be, not ruling yourself internally, but in that default mode of external energy ruling you. Yeah. So what, if you could, you've mentioned the word energy harvesting a number of times. I wanted you to expand on that a little bit more and maybe give some specific examples.
Yeah.
I don't think people understand the significance of that.
So energy harvesting it happens quite a lot because we're seeking approval. We're constantly seeking approval. We're constantly seeking validation. We're constantly seeking connection. And so, for lack of a better way to describe it, energy harvesting is a two-way street, okay? Because it's transactional. If I align with this group, I get to be part of this group, and they give me validation so long as I follow these rules. And sometimes the rules are unspoken, and sometimes the rules are bullet point dictated, one after another after another. You can't think this, and I know so many people that are willing to check off the boxes so that they can become part of the group. And so what one example is like this just happened last week. It's
Oh,
hilarious.
yeah.
So
Ooh, a
I
new
got
one.
invited to be on a podcast. It was a relationship podcast. I knew nothing about it, but one of the women who was part of it knew me as the champion for masculine, feminine energies. Oh, they were in for a big surprise because they were not ready for what I was all about. So they assumed that because I talk about masculine, feminine energies, that my view of masculine, feminine energies would align with their view of the discrepancy between boss babes, babes with all that, and that if you want a piece of this, then you better make X amount of dollars. And I was just like horrified because, and of course I didn't do my homework. I'm assuming if I get invited to be part of a podcast or be part of a whatever, that people kind of know what it is that I do. But it was very, very clear that I checked off some boxes and they made assumptions about me. So at the end of it, because I wasn't in agreement, all right, it was already, the chat was blowing up. They're like going, oh my God, look at her website. I mean, she's just like, and look at her Facebook thing. My cover where I am giving the thumbs up to the good men folk who show up for their families. And I got so much hate on that one. I was a patriarchy apologist. So that was the pendulum that they put me on. They completely dismissed me. And yet I had them all mesmerized because I was very honest with them. It was very clear these women were harvesting their beauty. Their beauty, the whole TNA kind of thing, that was kind of their jam. It wasn't clear, but once, you were there for like 5 minutes, it was very clear. These were the vixen mentality where what you see is what you get and more. And I'm entitled. I'm an entitled woman that I get to harvest men's attention and weaponize it so I can get all their money. I mean, that was kind of the bottom line. And I said, well, I talk about the gynocracy a lot. I talk about weaponized sexuality and how women over the millennia have weaponized their beauty, their sexuality to get over on men. And that is what co-created the patriarchy. So they didn't like the little energy history lesson. And so before I knew it, it was one of those places in my reality where once again I had turned over the apple cart because people assumed things about me and were expecting me to feed them my energy by agreeing with them and getting on board. And I wasn't having any of it. And it was actually a very cool experience. It was a typical experience for me because quite often that is what I do as a provocateur. I upend a lot of people's assumptions about men and women, about the masculine, feminine, about reality, because these groups get fixated on certain criteria and that's their reality. And they think that everybody should be on board. And if you're not on board, then whatever, you're not part of their club. And I clearly was not part of their club.
Didn't have it up meet the criteria. You ruffled the feathers of the confirmation bias, did you?
Apparently, yes. And it was interesting because I kept waiting to get kicked off the call, and I didn't. Much to their credit, they actually, after it was crazy, because there were some really, really crazy. I mean, they were like getting in my face, and for me, I just don't react. I'm very calm. I'm not going to sit there and be a blithering, crazy, unhinged woman. And they were unhinged. They were just coming at me like, what? you were probably against the Me Too movement. I said, oh, you the Me Tool movement? Yes, I was actually, so I was just like right there with all of their projections and all of their, disrespect. And I just held my own. And you hold your own by being dignified, by being calm, by being rational and logical and not yelling, just being right there with them. And all of their, yaya gagas, it was just like everything just sort of settled down.
Right.
And
So really all of us being aware of like our codependency habits because it's dangerous, right? Our
yes,
fawning responses, to please
yes,
others that are coming on, asserting some kind of power, dominance, or authority. It reminds me of the Milgram experiments and how vulnerable people are to just sort of put aside their own sense of integrity, even to just do what they're told. And what
yes,
you demonstrated is real courage to stand apart into your own independent thought, right?
yes,
And not going along to get along, not trying to just, shut your mouth and, not ruffle
exactly.
feathers, but to speak up the honest truth. And, because agreement is dangerous, right? And that's what
Indeed,
you're experiencing
indeed.
in
That's called totalitarianism. And I know that, even in the groups, even in One Great Work Network, I don't agree with everything. I'm fine with it. I can agree to disagree. Am I going to hate on a person? Why? That's ridiculous. It's just so, but people are so, they're so caught up with these blanket statements and the wave of reactivity against someone. It's like, holy moly. And, so when I witnessed that, I'm just like, yeah, I just got to step back and I just let the flow of that. That's the energy harvesting right there. You can feel it. It is a rush of craziness.
And you
And
don't have to push back against it with the equal force,
yes,
right? That creates that
that's the
identitarianism.
perfect thing to do, is that because when you push up against it, it pushes up against you. There's an equal and opposite reaction. So what you need to do is you just need to untether yourself and take stock of your energy and bring it down. Don't match it. Don't push up against it. Don't match it. It's willfully ignoring it, to be quite honest. Being aware of it and not allowing your energy field to touch it. I think that's a good way to put it, because you can feel it. We can feel the energy as it's coming toward us. And as a martial artist, you just get out of the way. You get out of the way, you step aside, let it pass. And what's funny about that is it can work two ways when you do that. You can actually piss them off even more because they want so much your attention, or they just find somebody else to glom onto. And I think that is like, I really trust the moment, especially when I'm aligned and self-contained in my own organized self, heart, mind, body, soul, spirit coordination. I just love that, because each of these components of you that make the totality of you are all speaking the same language and aligned.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So Marja, do you have any practices that you do yourself or that you recommend to other people to be able to maintain that state of
I
internal
do.
alignment under
I
pressure?
do.
Yeah.
I am a fan of journaling and burning. So what I do, and especially if it is a topic that comes up again and again and again. In fact, I did a little bit earlier this morning, particularly with my family members and our ill-fated call, where, you know, there was a clash, and of course I was in the middle because, you know, I don't live in Ukraine, I don't live in Russia, I'm no longer living in Europe. This clash between Zelensky and Putin, Trump, Putin, and Zelensky, you know, and so here it was. So here's what I did. It's called squares exercise. So you do headings. So it's 4 headings, 4 sheets of paper. And so the first heading that I had was, I fear war. And so under that heading, I wrote down everything about what that heading brought up for me. I fear war, you know, and it's unedited. You just write it down, one word, several words. You can write a whole paragraph, whatever. You fill the page, you keep writing until you're done. And the second heading was, I love war. And you write everything under that heading, on and on and on and on. Okay. And then the third heading was, I love to fear war. And it's just a play on words, and you write everything down. And then the third heading, or the last heading, was, I love war and peace. And I don't know why I wrote that, but it was just this intuitive thing. Okay. And I went on and on and on and on and on. And what it is a brain upchuck of every thought form, whether it's yours, wherever it is, the thought ball about war and peace. And what it is, it just excavates everything onto this piece of paper. There is an amazing thing that happens when you're in this sort of mental realm. It is going, it's just grinding away. It keeps people up at night. It stresses them out. You know, you want to get stoned. You want to have a drink. You know, you want to whatever to get away from it. This way, the thoughts come up. You're writing it down. It goes through, and you're writing it out. I got so tired, you know, I'm ambidextrous, so I use my left hand. I was just like, and so I wrote so much, I actually created this gangling cyst from all the energy that was just like, you know, because I felt bad for my family members. It's like, oh my God, you know, there's nothing I can do about it. And there's part of me that finds humor in it. So I wrote about, you know, feeling guilty about, you know, wanting peace and all that kind of stuff. And then what I did is that there's a little prayer after you do all this, that you recognize that each of these are polarized states of reality under each heading, and that you offer it up to the divine, whatever you want to call it, knowing that these are to be unified. Okay. So in other words, it's not just this or that. It is everything and more. And then, so what I did after that, after I said the prayer, is that I just sort of did some breathing, and then I burned it. And it was fabulous, because what it allowed me to do was to just acknowledge that there's all these thought forms involved in war and peace, whether you love it, whether you hate it, whatever. Okay. These polar opposites, and you bounce around, and it's going to be like this or that or every which way. And when you burn it, the element of fire has a purifying aspect to it. So that's what I like to do. And I like to do it because I like journaling, and I need to do something physically to like really work it out. Like, I can't do it on the computer. Some people are good with that. You know, they can take their notes and I can't do it. I have to, you know, get it. And I put a lot of energy into it. And so that is one of the things that I do. And I think it's one of the reasons why I can like really step away from very, very heated situations. I can step away from a lot of really horrific situations, which makes me really good as a facilitator because I don't get caught up in the horrors of stuff. I don't deny it, but I also don't identify with it. And I think these are important. So I hope that's helpful because it's
Yeah.
just so practical, you know?
Yeah. And I think it's a good way of recognizing that we all have inner contradictions and we have certain
Yes.
hypocrisies within ourselves. We
Yes.
have parts of us that think one thing, and maybe we attach our ego to that image of being a certain way, and then deny or push down anything that is contradictory to that. But the truth
Yes.
is that we are filled with these contradictions, and to be
Yes.
able to put them out into a visible space where we can witness them, and then work through, this process of merging or clarifying, polarized thoughts, and
Yes.
seeing how our emotions and our ego is involved. I could see how this exercise could really help clear
Yes.
out a lot of that.
Yes. And it serves to really facilitate congruency between the heart, mind, body, soul, and spirit. Because a lot of the times, a lot of people don't even want to admit it. You know, all over my neighborhood, I live in a very well-to-do, like Derek's been here, mostly retirees. And, it's beautiful. We're in the foothills. We're away from the riffraff. But there's it's very woke, quote unquote, because we're very near. I'm in a sanctuary state, near a sanctuary city. There's 2 sanctuary cities in this state. I mean, it just goes on, and people coming up to me because they know I'm not going to come after them, but confessing, I voted for Donald Trump, and I'm like, I don't vote, and they're just sort of so. There is a relaxing thing happening when you can encompass all views and not go apeshit, and just keep your equanimity, keep your cool. I mean, I don't care, whatever. And there's something that happens in the neighborhood where there's an allowing, there is a natural inclusivity that happens where you don't have to sit there and announce things. You don't have to have this aggression. You don't have to be a Karine and get in everybody's face and make everybody insane with your shrillness. So I really appreciate the integral results of these journaling exercises. Not to mention that I think that when we speak calmly, there's an invitation there to not get on the defensive.
Yeah, and it also will invite a more productive conversation with another person, by helping to maintain the status of
Yes.
regulation, internally,
Yes.
which is the only place from which we can access like a balanced brain state.
Yes.
If and there's like an interesting what would be the word, like where 2 things are kind of true here, or it seems like a contradiction, like a paradox, right?
Yes.
Where we're talking about staying in equilibrium, finding that equanimity, being calm, being the witness, but also speaking the truth and not shying away from truth. And some people might see that as contradictory.
Yeah.
So how would you reconcile those?
Well, I like truth at all costs. I'm all about that. I will not blow sunshine up people's butts to make them comfortable. I've never been like that. And, a lot of people come at me and go, you could have worded that a little differently. Yeah, I could have, but I didn't. I don't know what to say. Sorry, not sorry. I'm learning. I'm a little bit more diplomatic as I've gotten older, where I will concede certain things, but I will not concede the truth. I'll let people rant on and get in my face without being defensive, but I'm not going to back down. I'm not going to back down, and that is, it's gotten me into a lot of trouble. I love history, so I usually have my facts behind me, and I know how things happened. So I am quite willing to give a history lesson or a civics lesson in certain things, and I don't mind that. And I will let people, people swear at me, whatever. I don't care. I don't take it personally because I don't bite the bait. I will not allow myself to react to that kind of aggression. And once again, as a martial artist, you just step away. You don't give it any energy, and you maintain your true center, your true north. So I find that to be very, very helpful. But yeah, conceding the truth, no way, not going to happen. And oh well. So I don't get invited back, or we're not going to invite her to the party. Okay. Actually, that's not even true. So it's, I think it's fun to be the provocateur, which is why I don't shy away from it, because I want people to think. I want people to activate their critical thinking skills. Yeah. And a lot of people don't even know what the hell that is. I want them to really question their reactions and their defaults, because a lot of times people will default, and I'll ask them, well, why are you saying that? Why would you say that? And they don't even have an answer because they've never thought about it. So as a provocateur, I like it. It's like, it's my job, to question reality, to question your own sensitivities, because they might not even be yours.
Right.
Where do these thoughts come from?
Right. So while being a consciously choosing to be the provocateur is different than being reactive in your defensiveness.
Indeed.
Right? Yes.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Because the reaction and the defensiveness, your energy is being harvested. You're feeding the shit show.
And then you'll feel exhausted, and you might have physical symptoms. There's indications in your body that that was not the productive energy for you or the conversation at all.
Yeah.
Self-awareness is so key here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, I know for myself as a facilitator, in fact, I got a full schedule this week just from that kerfuffle. So many people up in arms, and, people realize, I'm a very, very fair person. I have a certain level of competence in terms of being able to just kind of lay out a foundation for people who don't know anything, to give them a foundation where they can launch off of it for themselves if they want to. And I always tell people, it's up to you. You can go down the rabbit hole and discover the truth for yourself, or you can be at the mercy of whatever media construct has your attention, and so it's a choice. You either choose peace or you choose chaos, and the way to peace is really it is diplomacy. And how does diplomacy begin? It begins internally. You have to check out your polarities, your inconsistencies, your hypocrisies, as you were talking about, and face them. And some of it isn't pretty. I had many, many contradictions. In fact, I'm working on the third edition of my first book, Because guess what? My conclusions from when I started writing it 20 years ago and the latest version from 8 years ago, oh shit, it's not true anymore. So I have to come clean and show the trajectory of what I had concluded to where I am currently, because I owe it. I owe it to my readership. I owe it to people that, I'm a constantly evolving person, human being, and who I was 8 years ago is not the same person I am now, let alone who I was 20 years ago when I started writing the book. So there is that, and it really requires you gotta be real and humble, and it's like, oops, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Being humble to yourself, in a sense, being willing to swallow your pride and being
Mhm.
willing to say I was wrong,
Yes.
or it's a skill to stay open to new
Yes.
information,
Mhm.
because it's very easy to get attached to certain information and associate it with some kind of security. And ultimately, it's false.
Yeah.
You could think of religious sort of ideologies and so forth.
Indeed. It's a false identity, and when we have that identitarianism and we're just, oh, this is how I am, it doesn't leave a whole lot of room for growth, for admitting that, oh, this was a false premise, and I'm coming clean on that. It doesn't leave a whole lot of room, and it just makes it just makes people crusty. We're just not going to be flexible. We're just going to come hell or high water. It's like, oh my gosh, and we really need to learn how to be flexible, to bend with the times, to understand that, when we're talking about human evolution, we're spiraling. And as we go higher and higher and higher, the view from our higher stance, our higher standing, is not going to be the same, say, where it was 4 years ago. And,
I think, what that brings to me, is when we're talking about parenting, I can see, with regret, certain ways that I parented before I had awareness that I have now.
Yeah.
And to be able to face that and feel the feelings around that and let go and make amends, or, shift. I think all of that is really important. And that idea of flexibility is both, mental and physical, as a
Oh yeah, it
in our
is.
lives.
Yeah. And I know that one, what you're talking about. There's a certain, I call it the burn, where you're being told a tricky truth by one of your children, where, I clearly fucked up, and whoa, it's just like, and you're just like,
It's one of the hardest things to be humble about.
yes,
We want to
it's
stand
painful.
strong in our good intentions, and
Yes.
but I do think it's transformative to be able to receive feedback, especially from children, because I don't know about you, but my kids, they tell me, where I fucked up.
Oh yeah.
No
holds barred.
Yeah.
Yeah. And often with the caveat, you're not going to like this, but I need you to sit there. It's like, okay, all right, ouch. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It hurts. Oh, yeah.
So what I concluded, Mario, from what you were talking about, of just like looking back and like realize like, oh snap, that wasn't really correct, or I wasn't in full alignment or whatever in the past. So how are we gonna be in alignment to that upward spiral, right? So
Yes.
it has to have that foundation of that heart-based intelligence of truly caring for the truth that's going to override all this bullshit shadow
Truly.
ego attachment stuff. I think, right?
Yes, that is absolutely correct. And to, give yourself the space to transform because as human beings, spirit in these meat suits, so to speak, we're ever growing, ever evolving. It doesn't stop. And so to be concretized in your identity and concretized in your belief structures and your mindsets, I mean, yeah, you can't turn into a statue. It's just very, it's not cool, and I think I think it's stressful to try to whoa, well, I can't think that, or I can't say I was wrong. Yeah, you can. Yeah, embrace it.
It's especially challenging, right, when you're in a public sphere. Right?
Oh yeah, for real. Yeah. I mean, I have messed up so many times on my content, written and on video and on interviews, where I'm just like, oh wow, okay. But I and this is one of the reasons why I don't edit, is because it's down. I'm not going to fool people, and I know a lot of people who edit, and they do these little tricky edits, and they splice and dice, and they re-say things they didn't say. That's why I like the raw footage. I'm just like, no, man, you didn't say that. Sorry. I'm not blowing sunshine up your butt on that one. It stays, because I've had people go, well, could you edit this? Because I want it to sound like, no, I can't. I won't.
That's so interesting. Yeah, to hold true to the truth. That's another way of holding true to truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people's humanness, that we don't need to create an illusion of some kind of perfection or idealism, but maybe there's more power in just being authentic and then publicly owning our mistakes, or showing that spirit of growth, right, and evolution.
Yeah.
Because if we can model that, then other people may feel safer to do so as well.
Yeah.
And get off this idea of having a savior complex, or putting someone on a pedestal.
Yeah,
right?
No one's coming to save you, my friends. No one. Okay. Not even Donald Trump. He's not saving anybody. Get over it already. So, and that's a hard one for people. I know I've actually pinned apologies on some of my videos where I clearly misspoke. It's like, oops. And make amends, and we'll have a link that people can, learn more. And this is evolution. This is evolution, and it is disidentifying with a certain moment. I mean, I think this is a lot of trauma healing, is really disidentifying with the trauma, with your pain, your PTSDs. It's stop identifying with it. It doesn't mean that you are dishonoring yourself and denying it ever happened. No, that is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about taking yourself off the hook so that your energy can reset and no longer be harvested by this, F up 30 years ago.
Totally, Marja.
That harmed you. Disidentify with it.
Yeah.
But so many people, unfortunately, trauma, I call it weaponized woundology, where you just get to pound it into the ground, and then you're going to point at people and you owe me this, you did this to me. I mean, the whole thing of blaming white people and white men, it's just perplexing to me. It's like, oh my God, how did we get here?
Yeah, and it's not rational.
No, it is not.
There's the other piece too, where I see a lot of my clients who are overanalyzing every little thing they do say, and they overthink and perseverate and obsess. And I really like the phrase disidentify with a certain moment.
Yes.
Because that is healing trauma, because that perseveration and that obsessive thinking on a moment, like I made this mistake, right? And beating yourself up and being overcritical is rooted in trauma. And it's that perseveration that does keep you stuck in rigid calcification instead of being
Indeed.
free to evolution and growth. And so there's lots of angles, whether you're internally oppressing yourself or externally, that whole energy is what is very sick. Yeah.
I agree with that wholeheartedly, because I think that too is at the core of the negative self-talk. And I caught myself like just the other day where I was like, whoa, what is that? Where did that come from? Catching myself, calling myself dumb for catching a thought. And it was like, no. And I formally apologized to myself because it was such an automated knee-jerk reaction. Okay, there was no consciousness there. It was a reaction to something that was very, very old. And I had the consciousness, I was aware enough to catch it in the moment. And so not only apologize to myself, but trace it back, way back, to realize, wow, that is not even mine. It was something that a nun at a parochial school that I was attending had literally upchucked onto all the girls, and it was an all girls school. So, and this woman was like, and I remember her. I'm like, wow, Sister Mary Balbina, not good.
Right.
Like, and just remembering this woman too. She was very stoic and how do we call it? Pursed lips, the sort of tight kind of thing. And this poor woman had IBS, and she had a certain odor, so to speak.
Oh gosh.
Where she's in front, and if you were sitting in the first two rows, and I was purposely getting into trouble so I could sit way in the back, because there really literally was a stench thing where, I mean, she had some medical issues that were just horrific, and it smelled like death. I don't even know how to describe it other than that. And so just tracing that back, I hadn't thought about her in a long time, but just catching that self-talk that was very malignant. It was very malignant. It was hateful. So a lot of self-hate about just this sort of the wistfulness of what it is to be a young girl, a young girl of like 6 and 7, where you're just kind of discovering how to interact with the world and kind of on your own terms and separating from mommy and all that kind of stuff. And that kind of discovery, and she just shamed us. And that's what it was, this malignant shame where, I just kind of felt it.
Right.
And
it's like a programming moment or a period of time of this subtle
Indeed.
programming, but deep, that maybe you weren't as conscious of, right?
Yeah,
So people will say a lot, well, I didn't really have trauma when I was a kid. I didn't get beaten. I wasn't molested. But then they then become very disconnected to some of these more subtle programming and subtle attacks on their selfhood that lead to these beliefs, these negative cognitions about themselves that are echoing throughout their life or keeping them in a certain straitjacket. And I'm wondering, what are your thoughts about why people are so resistant to do this work, and how we can help make this work more evidently important and perhaps even inviting, to people?
Yeah, that is a great question, and I think we're getting there. I think that we're coming up on this And it is a little bit of a backlash, because on the other hand, the way it's coming up in this, and it is a mass consciousness reality where people are rallying around their victimization and spewing it onto the world at large. And
Projectile vomiting?
yeah, indeed. And what's happening is that upchuck is hitting all the wrong people. And so what's happening with that is that all those people that are getting hit with this projectile upchuck are, it's like the confrontations are starting to happen. And while that in and of itself can be seen as unproductive, I think it's a starting point, because there is a nature of victimhood that ultimately wants to fight back. And I think part of evolution is looking at that inclination to fight back, that knee-jerk reaction to spew, which, is happening, and to be able to harness it in a way where instead of going after people outside of you, to really turn it inward and search for the perpetrator within you, because that is what's keeping it alive. There is an alignment with the perpetrators. It's a kind of Stockholm syndrome, although I don't want to use that necessarily, because it's a little too common that people use that, and so it could be misconstrued. But the victim perpetrator polarity, when you use the pyramid system, the healing comes up here, and this has to join up here. So this is the higher part of the victim perpetrator polarity. And that's where the healing happens, when these two can have a conversation. Because for me, what I discovered in my own shadow work is that I was the victim. I was also the perpetrator. And that's where a lot of the negative self-talk happens in victim perpetrator mode. And to have the conversation and take it up here so that it can happen, and it's tricky, because a lot of people want to go into denial. They don't want to look at it. And I understand that. Some of our traumas are really very ugly, very unpleasant, very painful. However, I think part of what made it attractive for me was I got some really amazing love and hand-holding from my Jungian analyst, Pearl, who really she was very good at this. And I did not know that language of trauma, in my 20s when I started working with her. And so to get into the archetypes of victim perpetrator, and the archetypal energies of dominance and submission, pain and suffering, pain and pleasure, all of that, the sort of triads having to do with pain, pleasure, and the shame involved in that. So she broached it in a way, not just using the archetypes, but really gently uncovering the stuff that we hide that is shameful, and being able to have conversations with those bits and pieces. So I know so many people who are encompassing that kind of work without really spelling it out, because I know if I heard it spelled out as a younger person, I wouldn't want to do it. What was fun for me, archetypes. Ooh, archetypes. And I read Jung, so I was totally into it. It's like, ooh, I've got archetypes in me. All right, let's go. Let's go there.
Yeah.
I'm there for that. That's really cool. And I think work that you do, Leslie, I think is attractive for people. And work that Caroline Riley does in digging into these pieces that make up the human psyche, that make us all up. We all have these archetypes, and I think part of that archetype work is what makes shadow work attractive.
It helps mitigate the deep shame
Indeed.
that I think that most people really do feel, but don't even really acknowledge. It's like this hidden, very hidden. Shame is inherently quite hidden.
Yeah.
So it's, when you can start to see that we all have these archetypes, and we have all these dynamics that are natural in how they play out within all of us, it can really allows one to take the shame out of the equation a bit, and be more curious and more compassionate.
Yeah.
And from there we can heal better.
And to be able to understand that with shame, there is a polarity. There's healthy shame, and then there's really, really destructive shame. And to play with those polarities and see where it lands. I have a client who wrote a book that's on Sounds True, that got published by Sounds True. Sheila Rubin and her husband Brett Lyon, they wrote a book about embracing shame, which is just so powerful. And I just remember I couldn't put it down. I just read it from cover to cover, in one sitting, and was just so blown away by how the embracing of shame, it really just encompasses just all those various parts of us that felt unworthy, that felt dirty, that felt despicable or whatever. And in order to have a conversation with all those parts, we really do have to, at least in my perspective, as a grown-up, I had to learn that, wow, I've got to adult here. I've got to adult here with all of my various young selves, the little girl, the teenager, all these parts of me that were just blasted by shame, whether it was internal, external, whatever it was, and to encompass all these parts of me in order to have these conversations, to integrate them, and to disidentify once again with being a bad girl, being a dirty girl, whatever it is that would ignite those feelings of shame, where you don't feel like you're worthy to even be breathing, and you should just end it here and now. So between that and working with the archetypes, I think that there's a lot of latitude and leeway for everyone to find the right modality, perhaps, to find the right fit, to be able to really excavate these real hidden parts of us that are wanting, really wanting healing and wanting to be seen and heard and embraced and loved, because then to take it a step further, we wouldn't have to cop to these identitarian tactics that are outside ourselves to gain that validation.
Right. So we have people are kind of fragmented within themselves to a degree and things like that. And so I was thinking about it like this in regards to the healthy side of shame and the extreme negative side. It's the negative side is that self-loathing in a sense, or on the lighter side, it's just humility. I used to say, basking in your own humility type of stuff. just being able to admit that you're wrong and embrace it. Don't fear it, right?
Yes. Yes.
Because we've all fucked up, and like no one's got 100% anyways. Like chill out, humanity. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, this seems really key here, that it's the unprocessed, non-integrated parts that are seeking identification, right, with external movements or,
Right.
this identitarian behavior, right, is from the ultimately unprocessed traumas and things that are not conscious that we haven't worked through and integrated.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's so true. And it's tender. It's really, really tender to face those bits and pieces of ourselves, and to be able to do it in such a way where we're not further shaming ourselves. And so the conversations that we can have with each other, where we allow ourselves to counter shame those parts that are just like, oh, I can't, I've gotta like hide, and in that counter shaming, to have it be an invitation to, it's okay, it's okay, you can come out, like take my hand, and let's come together and just be together, just to breathe.
Yeah, it seems obvious how, the political polarities really get in the way of that process of coming together, really accessing truth and having compassion. It's very obvious how sick that dynamic of polarization is in the world. And people then, with their over-identification, just keep deepening and deepening these ruts, that get in the way of unity, or even just a cooperative conversation or problem solving.
Indeed.
Yeah. I really like what you said, Mario, and it's kind of like a small gathering or whatever of just having some soul food. Have a bon appetit with those tender, crunchy morselettes, and digest well, right?
So, I call them, yes.
Let's have tea with all our crusty parts.
Indeed. We can dunk them. In like,
we'll dunk them in the tea. We'll soften up that crust.
Indeed. I really like that, because I know with the kids, like, my kids they're pushing 50 now. It's like, holy moly, how'd that happen? But there are two events that were very, very poignant. One having to do with masturbation, where I was not equipped. I just wasn't equipped to deal with it, and I didn't know what to do. But I had this little voice that was saying, whatever you do, this is normal. No shame. Don't yell. Don't be snarky. Don't be an asshole. And don't be a feminist. Don't make them wrong. And so, and the way I handled it was, I had 2 bottles of Fantastic. It's like, because it was a cleaning day, and it's like, this is normal. You just need to clean up after yourselves. That was it. And then to hear it decades later, like, that was great. That was great. You didn't give us a complex. You reiterated that this was a normal thing. It was okay. And that, you were in line. You were in line. We were just lazy, And so, and to have that come back, that you have to think in terms of, well, how would I want this broached with me if I were in that position? And I think that's another way to sort of disidentify with curveballs of life, because there's lots of them, And sometimes we're better equipped to deal in the moment, and sometimes we're not. Sometimes we just go fly off the handle, you know. I'm fortunately not one to fly off the handle. I tend to just get very quiet and leave. So you know, my avoidant tendencies tend to take over, and a lot of that is because being on the spectrum, I just don't know what to do sometimes. So it's easy for me to just go, okay, I think I'm gonna go now. So it's been a journey to be able to stay focused and stay on point and be kind, you know, because I think there's a kindness factor in endeavoring to disidentify, and there's a kindness factor in when people come at you because you're not part of their little clique, or you're not part of their group, you're an outsider, you're not one of us, so you're one of them, you know, that kind of thing. And I usually just laugh that kind of stuff off. But sometimes you can discern when it's coming at you that, oh, okay, this person really feels threatened by the fact that you have a completely different view, because they can't fathom anything else other than what they have identified with. And I think, you know, those are the times where you got to be kind.
And they may perceive that your perspective is a threat as well.
Yes.
Right. So that may be going on subconsciously, that somehow what you're saying is threatening their safety or stability.
Mhm.
Right. And so
Indeed.
we on the other side can have that attunement to their psychological reactivity and unprocessed inner, you know, self-talk. Then we don't have to react to it.
Yes.
Right? We can recognize they're in their own kind of dreamland storyline.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Dreamland storyline. It's an alternative reality, and it's just as valid. It's just as valid as our own, our individual things. And going back to transurfing, that is one of the keys in transurfing, is to allow everybody else to be different from you. It's so simple. And, you know, when that becomes, you know, kind of the norm, I mean, it's one of my credos, allowing everybody to be different from me. You know, it's like okie dokie. I'm okay with that. And what it does energetically is that it just, the baseline reality is peace. It's peaceful.
And I would think like dynamic growth, right? You know, when we can accept and appreciate everyone's unique difference and allow people to be that, right? Then we can, in our openness, get to a creative place, like where that can synergize and expand, you know, our overall consciousness as humans, you know, through that dancing together, you know, in a sense. I think it opens up the potential for new ways of relating and new experiences.
Yeah. It's a cool thing. And I think what's even cooler is I've practiced this so many times that it literally has the power to disarm people and get them to like really soften their stances and come down from that sort of warring high horse where, you know, the inclination is to just go to war and make everybody wrong and, you know, really kind of push your agenda. And
it's like getting back to the heart of things.
Yeah. You know, to agree to disagree. And there's a lot of power in that, you know.
Yeah. And this disarmament, if you will, of especially in the times where things are so weaponized with the programming and all this stuff, and especially with the identity politics. I mean, that's like off the charts weaponized and stuff.
Oh,
And you can
it's
see,
insane.
so yeah, you see people just easily offended because they're so stuck on these ego attachments of whatever, and they got their
Mhm.
little badges and stickers and like, I support the current thing or whatever the hell, right? So yeah, it's just interesting that if you speak anything that opposes their worldview of those things, it's like you're making a personal attack on them because they're so entrenched in that ego attachment,
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah,
Right?
yeah. And they want to feed off of that conflict. So it serves two purposes. It concretizes whatever they're identifying with, and then they can make you wrong, and they get more energy from it, especially if you bite the bait and you get into the stuff. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I like to poke fun at stuff, but I'm noticing people are humorless, man. They're just like, wow, okay, I didn't realize that there was that. I posted a video last week of a Madonna song, Vogue, turned
Going
into
Doge.
Doge. I mean, it is so hilarious. And I
Yeah.
had people coming at me. Well, I'm sure Madonna didn't okay that. I'm like going, dude, it's okay for Saturday Night Live to go on a fucking trip show and, do their thing, but it's not okay for somebody to cleverly do this thing. I mean, I couldn't stop laughing, and people were just annoyed with me. I'm like, oh, whatever. Well, good. I'm sure Madonna's having a meltdown, and so that's kind of where it's at for people. You try to be funny, add some levity, and they are not having it. They want to go to war with you. And so, sometimes it can whoops.
I think the lack of humor is really a signal or a symptom of the
Indeed.
rigidification and identitarianism, the term you're using,
Yeah.
of it being like people taking themselves way too seriously.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in a sense, taking the shit show of the world way too seriously.
Yeah.
I know in terms of like some experiences with psilocybin that were transformative for me was that perspective of sort of seeing things from the absolute ridiculousness that they are,
Yes. Yeah.
and the way things are playing out in the world.
Yeah.
And when you kind of are able to turn that corner, it can help not to like just break down in despair and, distress over it in a
Yeah.
sense. I don't think that's bad.
Yeah. Or this sort of hateful nature. And I found it, I find the stuff, it's in every grouping. It's in every pagan, some of the pagan groups that I'm in. It's like, oh my God, I've had to leave. It's like, no. My tarot is better than yours. My runes are better than yours. I mean, it's like, oh, really? Wow.
Damn.
And same with the Tantra groups. It's the same thing over and over and over. And I've always
Cultish
said,
mentality within these pendulum echo chambers.
oh yeah. And that's why I have always said from the very beginning, I don't like groups because eventually that group will turn into a totalitarian, sycophantic echo chamber of yes people and using your term, Derek, flying monkeys. I mean, that's what happens, and they come after you, and it's creepy. It's really
right.
creepy.
And then the boundary between them and you, us and them, just becomes thicker.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or by association, you associate with certain people,
Right.
I have associations with Michael Tessarian. I have associations with Sethicus Boza, and that makes me intolerable because these people hate those people. And I'm just like, okay. Or with Mark Passio. Oh, you're one of Passio's bimbos. I'm like, what? I go, I don't think Mark has any bimbos. I mean, I don't know what you're talking about. But it's just like, it's kooky. It's really, really kooky.
Yeah. It's almost it's a weapon, right? It's an attack to put you in a box, right?
Mm-hmm.
And associate you with a stereotype.
Yes.
that then is a way of dismissing. You know, it's a logical fallacy
Yes.
ultimately, and that I think is also important for people to be aware of logical fallacies and start to recognize, well, what is critical thinking and logic and flexible thinking, you know, getting out of the all and nothings.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
So
But
I
this
am
is
ever entertained by it, you know.
especially on these higher levels that we are, speaking about groups that are, critical thinkers, truthers and yada yada, right? Yet they're
Supposedly.
still,
Supposedly.
yeah, they're putting the bait in debates too much
Indeed.
sometimes or whatever,
Indeed.
right?
I
Like,
agree.
come on,
I agree.
they're like these spiritual dick measuring contests or whatever, right? Like,
Right.
come on, like,
Seriously, and then using it to
sir.
somehow fit an agenda, you
Mhm.
know, that a person has in their own identitarian world, you
Yes.
know, whether
Yeah.
it's veganism or whatever it might be. It's like harvesting a message, you know, the energy, the popularity of a certain person
Yeah.
to then fit your own agenda to then like create more division.
Yes.
There's a lot of sick dynamics like that going on that for us to
it's
all watch out
crazy.
for. Yeah.
Yeah. The name calling that happens, like I've witnessed these things and I'm like, wow, you got a lot out of that, didn't you? You know, so I just delete these things now. I'm just, I'm just like,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah. I
I'm
think we're
not
too late in
gonna-
the game, you know, in a sense, to try to pick every battle or make friends with
Mhm.
every person. You know,
Yeah.
it's like we do need to be very focused on our message, and
Yes.
you know, the people who are willing to, I guess, do the work, you know, of what you're describing. It's the inner work, the ability
Mhm.
to transurf reality, you know, in such a way that we're staying focused and clean, you know,
Yes.
it's like clearing out energetically, you know, the stagnancy and the blocks inside us.
Yeah.
When we're out, you know, especially in any public way, we're going to get these attachments and different things. So we have to manage that, right, to keep our own channels clear.
Very true. And it's I think it's general housekeeping.
Yes.
Spiritual immunity, psychological immunity. I mean, you just have to keep your frequency raised at all times and not hop onto these things, and or be very discerning what it is that you align with. And even that can be a little dangerous because people will assume that you are aligning with something that you're really not, when especially if you're pointing out certain hypocrisies. You can get, you know, sort of thrown into these various categories because of an association. And for me, that just indicates, you know, for people who do it, you're just weak. You're just weak-minded.
Yes.
And I just leave it at that.
Yeah. It's
And
lazy. It's laziness, and
yes, it
it's
is.
defaulting to your desire to just be safe in your own limited thinking.
Mhm.
You know, instead of challenging that through opening up the mind to greater picture.
Yes.
So I have about 5 minutes left. This has gone by so fast.
Oh my God, it is.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
Yes, like
Started.
getting called a conspiracy theorist, and like just people want to throw that out there and brush
Oh,
off
totally.
any veracity of information coming at them, whatever. Like, hope that works out for you in life, or whatever. Like, okay, like it wasn't that high stakes of a conversation, anyway. Sometimes, like, hey, settle down now. I had a question for you in regards to being involved in groups and this and that and collaborating in this. How can one transurf properly to keep their authentic individuality within these collective groups and that kind of stuff, and not be assimilated or that kind of
Yeah. Well, I think for me, I have never been a follower. You know, and this is where my trauma history has like really served me, is I was just kind of thrown out into the world on my own at a very early age. So I'm accustomed to standing on my own and not belonging to a group. So I've always been this sort of outsider looking in. And so I'm very comfortable with that. I don't need a lot of validation. I don't need any validation outside, and and that has been a problem in some of my friendships and my relationships, because I'm not a yes person. If I don't agree with it, I'm not going to agree with it. Just because you're my friend, I'm not going to agree with you if I think it's shit. So, and that's just kind of the way it is. So for me, it's easy because, I don't need anybody's approval. I don't want anybody's approval, because I have learned through my trauma that any kind of alliance, if you're not careful, it's going to cost you. And what is it going to cost me? And so I'm very discerning with my groups. Does that mean I get it right? No. I've been betrayed over and over again by communities over the course of my life, where I thought when I signed up or joined up that my values weren't in alignment, only to realize, oh no, these are poseurs. This is not true. This isn't true. And so to be able to extricate myself and hit reset, and also perhaps do a kind of review of what my values are. So I'm very, very keen on that. And truth is important, which is why, One Great Work Network has been a very important alliance for me. I admire Mark. A lot of people don't like his tactics. I happen to like them. I like them. Some of those tactics have worked for some of my clients, and some of those tactics I wouldn't dare to use with some of my clients. So one size doesn't fit all. If you're going to be doing facilitation work, you really have to temper yourself and know your client, know your students, know their sensitivities, and be able to adjust. Otherwise, you're going to lose people. And your whole mission to facilitate shadow work is just going to be very lopsided, and it's not going to encompass a whole variety of people.
Yeah. I totally agree with you, Marja, 100%. And everything you've said today is really brilliant. And I apologize. I have to pop off. I'm going to let you guys continue. And
thanks, sweetheart. It's good to see you. As
to meet
always.
You again, and appreciate it very much. So we'll be in touch. And
all right, sweetheart.
Thank you. Bye.
Leslie, take care. So I guess to conclude, I don't want to take up all your time, but I don't mind sticking around for whatever, whenever. But it just sounds like in conclusion, right? Just people need to really just stay true to themselves, in alignment with truth, all caps, truth, not, pretend like their subjective truths are the isness, if you will, kind of thing.
Indeed. And I think it's important to really be clear about your own dynamic with groups. Like, what is your motivation to be associated with a group? And to be really honest, are you looking for validation? Are you looking to be with the cool crowd? Or, what is it? What is it? Because I've heard some ridiculous stuff. And, and my question always goes, okay, well, what is in it for you? If these are not your values, why are you there? Are you being a troll? Are you just trolling it? What are you getting out of it? And, I know some people who actually cop to joining groups because they get a lot of energy out of it. Whether it's, certain posts or looking through profiles of attractive women. I mean, I've had guys cop to that, where, they're part of a group, and, that is populated by very attractive women, and they sit there all day long looking at these profiles, particularly on Instagram. And I'm just like, oh, okay. I just feel really kind of dirty and soiled right now, and I'll call these guys out. I mean, they're my friends, and it's like, okay, whatever floats your boat, but to like really be unequivocally honest about your motivations, about why you're in a group.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the weaponization, because they lure, especially in with the whole identity politics and all that. You see, on all these university campuses, these young kids, they want to go out and save the world. They're all gung ho, and so that's when they get them, because they're full of that energy, right? And so they're gonna get that pendulum swinging wherever they're programming it towards, type of thing.
Indeed, and they haven't learned discernment, but they will.
Yeah.
They will. I mean, I know I've gone through, and there is that process of discernment when you identify with certain things, and then you go deeper into those groups, or you go deeper into that mindset, or deeper into this belief structure, and learning the history of this stuff. And you realize, oh shit, okay, that's a murderous psycho there. It's like, yeah, it's good to know. It's good to know, and you can either change your mind or not.
Yeah, and it's interesting that there's like these groups and this and that. Yet, for folks that have been studying, patterns of hidden hands behind the scenes and all that stuff, and like who runs propaganda and this and that, we can see kind of like, just like, man, this is so kind of self-evident sometimes. How are these people so lured into this, and like, they got the blinders on. They're not really seeing things from the 360-degree perspective. They're just taking in what sounds and feels good, right? And just running with that, and of ignoring the rest that kind of smells like shit or whatever, right?
And I think a lot of that, I think a lot of people who are susceptible to that have real broken family tribal systems, and they are looking for a substitute for mommy and daddy, for that familial validation and for that connection. And that is, I mean, it's one of the things that happens when people identify and really get caught up in cults. And, that kind of energy harvesting and hijacking of, your personal power to be part of a group. I mean, it's very seductive. It's very delicious for people who have been neglected, who are hungry for that, and get caught up by these charismatic guru types. And these people have no discernment. It's pretty shocking. I mean, some of the people that I have worked with over the years who were ritually abused in these cults. I mean, these are real things. And to identify with these rituals, to identify with the process of being initiated into these groups, that's a really intense form of identitarianism.
Yeah, it sounds like there's that Stockholm syndrome going on there, mixed in with the cognitive dissonance to kind of avoid this void within them that they're ignoring, I guess.
You relinquish your personal power to this person or to this group, to adhere to this group so you can be part of the community. And you don't, it's that group mind, think, feel, do, speak, believe. For me, I hear that, I'm just woo, woo, woo. The alarms are going off. I'm
don't
not
be the live. Yeah.
down with it. It's like, no, thank you. Step away
Yeah,
from the vehicle.
that kind of segues into what I wanted to ask you, live and direct, if you don't mind, because I got to get back to some old high school classmates that they saw something that I responded to on Facebook, and here we
Mhm.
go. Like everyone just came out the woodworks. I've spoken to these people in like years, and they not even gonna say hello, and just what the hell, Derek? So yeah, like these programs and anything where like the hashtag some whatever lives matter and this and that, and just
Oh
right
boy.
then and there it's like this exclusivity in the guise of inclusivity or
Yes.
equality and that
That
kind of
that
stuff. And
woke nonsense.
yeah, so there's all these divide and conquer tactics that are just off the fucking charts these days.
Mhm.
And I just responded, well, yeah, like all I mean, it's like hashtag LGBTQ, all queer lives matter, whatever. And it's like,
Yeah.
sure, I guess, but like what matters to me is that some of these people have serious mental issues and they need to be healed
Indeed.
properly. And they
Yeah.
just came at me like, "Wow, what are you talking about?" And it's like, what? Like I said, some, not all. Don't give me a blanket
Mhm.
statement. Don't throw out
Exactly.
your,
Exactly.
"Oh, I'm a bigot now. I'm a phobic," or whatever the
Yes.
hell, and all these
It's
programmed
selective.
responses. Like,
It's
whoa, like,
selective. And they want to go to war because that pendulum for them, they get to identify with that. And what goes with that? What goes with wokeness is that you're on the right side of stuff. You're right. You care about people. You're empathetic. It's bullshit. It's complete, utter bullshit. And they don't even know what they are adhering to. They have no idea. I mean, I've had conversations with some of these woke folks, and there's not one bit of critical thinking. It's, well, CNN said, or some actor said. It's like, wowie, okay. And for me, I'm sorry, you're just going to be dismissed, okay? Because you're just repeating monkey see, monkey do. You haven't gone down and done your research. And I'm not here to convince people. I just, it's like, okay, have a nice life. And it just is like, it's crazy. It's really, really crazy. And it's convenient because that left, right, center paradigm is very, and all the sides do it. They all do it. And it's just a matter of, like for me, I will not give them my energy. I don't even argue with them anymore. I'll just laugh. I'll just
yeah,
laugh. And if it's really super egregious and unreasonable and they're spewing, I'll just block them. It's like, no one's got time for that. I'm not going to sit and defend myself.
yeah, I hear you. And then you got to
Yeah.
defend yourself just for explaining why you made that choice. Sometimes, like, just
Yeah.
have you been attacked, motherfucker? Like, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and yeah, we can say, like what you do in like criticism, whatever, like it comes with the territory. But sometimes it just
Indeed.
comes, you know, so fucking unhinged and from so many different unexpected angles that yeah, it
Yes.
can be heartbreaking sometimes and all that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I totally admire your courage and strength and just being able to do that, metaphysical kung fu shit that you do and all that. Like
Yeah. Well, and it's an indication, because I noticed that the common thing of people coming after me is, and especially after they've befriended me, it all comes down to me refusing to throw someone under the bus, publicly humiliate someone by aligning with them and making an announcement of it. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to agree to disagree. But I'm not here to hurt people. I'm not here to discredit people. I'm not here to be a malignant force. That is not what I'm about. If that's what you identify with, have at it. Keep me out of it. I don't want to be involved in your drama. So, and it's consistent. that the people that come after me, that is where they're at. So, I need to be part of their club. I need to have these thoughts and hate the same people and feel the same way and back them up on their erroneous assumptions. It's like, no, man, I am not your girl. I'm not doing it. I won't do it. And
Yeah, you
that
ain't no
pisses people
identitarian.
off. It pisses people off, And so, I'm too old for it. I'm not compromising. And then what I'm noticing about these people is that they're very unhappy. I mean, you look at their posts, I mean, it's just nothing but complaints, nothing but putting other people down, complaining. You don't like somebody's creativity. It's like, why do you even have to go on about it?
Ha!
I mean, I don't get it. I don't get it. Why do you got to go and publicly put somebody down?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Kind of reflects their inner talk as well. And
indeed,
with your
indeed.
talk works with transurfing and all that. Yeah, you speak about, you're either like a spectator or like a transmitter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did I get that right?
And we are transmitters. We're participants. We're not just spectators. We're transmitters. We're creators. We're not just receivers. Most people are just receiving, and then they spew, and they spew because you don't agree with what they're receiving. And it's like, okay, whatever. Yeah. I'm just like, so I like, and I've said this, I've learned to roll my eyes without moving them.
Yeah.
People are going to sit there and spew hate on men or spew hate on me because I'm not aligned with whatever it is that they're spewing about or believing. I don't really care. I just, it doesn't bother me. It's just, let's just agree to disagree and move on. But even that's hard because they want to feed. They need your validation. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah, and it's a shame it's not based on like proper foundational principles a lot of times.
Not at all.
Because if it was, people would not be off-ended because they got that, proper solid ground that they're standing on, right?
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. It's not nuts.
Unfortunately, mon ami. But any last thoughts, words?
This was a great conversation, because it is so divisive right now. And even some of the truthers have come out after me because I post this funny shit about what's going on. It's like, I'm like, you know what? Fuck off. If you can't laugh, go away, And I'm not trusting a lot of the truthers anymore because they're one of the worst identitarians that I've ever met. Oh my gosh. Wow. So I'm like this, Derek. Whatever.
Yeah, it's cool to have, folks
You
like
away.
Tomas Sheridan just have poking fun at that and just.
Oh, I know. I know. And so Tomas and I would just laugh a lot of the times because it's like, wow, really? This is where we're at. And, to be able to see the benefit of all of the shakeup that's like going on, particularly in America, and also see the shakeup. I'm not at all surprised by what's going on in Europa. I mean, I saw this, and I've always said it. The EU is Hitler's Europe realized. And I'm going to get a lot of shit for that. I don't care. I used to live there. I get to say it. And it's just my opinion. So if you disagree, just disagree. But don't have a meltdown and go unhinged. And that's what people do. They just go unhinged. And so, and that's where I like, the provocateur. I'm going to poke fun at you, and especially if you don't know history and you don't know how things have developed, and you don't know why things have developed the way and you don't know the objectives, because what happens with a lot of identitarianism, I think, and this is my last thing, is that they want to fight. They want your energy. They want to fight.
Oh,
And if they
because they
don't
built
get
up this
it,
thing that they need to defend this, false
yes,
identity, right? Yeah.
indeed, indeed. And
Damn,
I'm just
okay.
like, okay, all right, have fun.
Yeah, jeez,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I guess my conclusion kind of just reiterate what we already spoke about, what I already said, of just, yeah, people really need to do the darn shadow work and
Mhm.
alchemize to who they truly are and live
Yes.
that
Yeah.
proper, authentic,
Discover that.
yeah, and not get pulled over here, over there, and the heartstrings are all exacerbated and all this stuff.
Yes.
So they
Indeed.
can't even like operate from that hardcore intelligence. Their EQ is kind of low these days, or whatever, right? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Or just distorted, just the distortions, and to be aware of the distortions, you know.
yeah,
Yeah.
and more aware of who we truly are. Yeah, and be aligned to that, despite all this exterior stuff and the shit shows and
Mhm. Yeah. Wow. And there's so many of them. Good Lord.
unfortunately, yeah. Maria, thank you so much.
Thank you, love.
When would people might be expecting this new edition of your book, perhaps?
Well, so one of the things that I have decided is that rather than publishing it as a book, I'm going to start publishing chapter by chapter by chapter on my Substack finally.
Ooh.
Simply because I'm tired of the publishing thing. I'm tired of all that rigmarole, and I want it available. So that's what I'm planning on doing. I've had the Substack for years. I've done nothing with it. It's like,
Yeah.
what am I doing? So that's the plan. And so I think the intro is coming in April, I believe. So perhaps April Fool's Day,
Hey, voila.
just for shits and giggles, because
Yeah.
yeah, I'm into it. So yeah, to start from there.
Great. Yeah, looking
Yeah.
forward to that, Maria.
All right, darling. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you and Leslie. And yeah, congratulations.
Yeah.
Happy birthday. Happy anniversary. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Here's to much love to you and
All right.
love to
Thank
community.
you.
Of course.
Ciao, Bellas.
Ciao,
Bye.
ciao.